Welcome to the Franchise Secrets Podcast with your host, Eric Van Horn. And today's returning guest is Chris Oakley, my business partner, business coach guru, and a good friend. And today we are going to talk about team building, hiring, firing, compensation to drive behavior, job descriptions, and all of that kind of stuff. So Chris, welcome back to the show.
Man, thanks for having me back. I hope I didn't screw it up too much last time.
Well, if this show does not make it to the air, you will know that you are a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, send me the hate mail.
I will, for sure. Do you get hate mail? Do you get people on social media that are haters?
No, I don't really. But I don't
doing enough. You need to be doing more. You need to be more controversial.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. Like I did do a talk in South Carolina a few weeks ago, and like they sent me all the reviews. And this is the way it works, right? Like the reviews were phenomenal across the board, except for one person was like, he's too sarcastic. And I'm like, that's the only one I care about. Like that one stupid, I was like, yeah, I know I'm sarcastic, but that was to be funny. Everyone else liked it. What's your problem? So no, I don't get much hate mail, but
that tells me you're not sarcastic enough, because when I heard that, I would have bet that guy or lady was being sarcastic with me. And I would have put that as a 10-star review.
Yeah. Well, it was a lady, because I tracked her down. I was like, I need to know who this person is and where she lives and how
So let's talk about that before we get into team building, because, and by the way, this was like completely unplanned, but I was in a meeting. I own some commercial real estate, and we have some tenants in there. One's a brew pub, great beer, great pizza. And he had some live music, and people across the creek or the river and the walk path and all that were like, someone complained on social media. And he went over there and said, hey, I'm trying to make it right. Like, hey, come on over. I'll give you some free beer and from free pizza and blah, blah, blah. And she's the only one that complained. And she said, I will always complain, even if you do it one more time. I will complain and I'll never come, basically. So as an ownership group, we were thinking, what do we do? And we don't own the brew pub, so it's not our problem, but we're the landlords. And at the end of the day, this was my take on it. And I think the rest of the group agreed. Like, I'm not going to make a rule for the exception.
It's good. Like, don't do a dang thing, right? I'm not rewarding that behavior. This person sucks at life, and some people just want to be miserable. And like, you can't reward that, because like it creates the wrong incentives for other folks. Everyone knows, like, we're always scared of bad reviews or any of that stuff online. And the reality is people see through that stuff. We do not need to be scared. I love the people that respond to those reviews. Hey, sorry, if you want to come in, you do your part to make it right, but everyone else sees you did your part, and they can read through the lines and say, this person just sucks. And they want to be miserable on that stuff, and people see through that. And so like, you can't play into it. Like, that's the perfect answer what you guys did.
Well, good. I'm glad we did the right thing, coming from the coach himself. Yeah. Let's talk about what we were originally going to talk about today, and that is team building. We built a pretty good team in our franchise. It's in a small town. Well, I mean, a large town compared to like where I live of 10,000 people. Like, this franchise is in the city, but compared to most, like you living in Nashville, this franchise is in the sticks. So it's somewhere in between, but we've built a really good team there. And I've known you talking about team building, coaching on team building, and you actually, helped build this team that we have in our first location. What was different between talking about it, helping people, and then actually doing it in that capacity in that franchise?
Well, the biggest thing is one of the reasons I want to do franchise other businesses is I don't want to be one of those coaches that doesn't do, right? And just speaks at people. And so doing this was partly for that reason. And very quickly, now I'd done it in the past, but very quickly it reminded me to be empathetic for these business owners, right? The challenge, it's not easy. People are not easy. Now you win on the hire, you win on the buy, right? Like, you get some really good studs that are just, humble and willing to work and learn. like that really makes a lot of things easier on that stuff. But the biggest thing was like, yeah, it's just it was instantaneous reminder is it's hiring people and correcting behavior and training and all that stuff. It's just not easy, right? Like the empathy came back in droves very quickly. And we do have a killer team, but I'm like, oh my gosh, if we didn't have a killer team on some of these things, I would be ready to punch a small child, right? Like you would just like it's just so challenging.
And you've never done that before, though. I mean, you've never punched a small child. Is this your sarcastic side coming out?
This is recorded, right? No, I have not.
So like we have, and we took a lot of time and effort putting the job description together, trying to hire the right person. In some ways we went against what other people were doing because we knew the type of person that we wanted to hire, the team that we wanted to build. And boy, we got someone that is, super like tied into the big vision of the company. He loves working there.
Yeah. And that's by design. I do think business owners miss this a lot. Like we spend too much time on job descriptions and all of the things that they're going to do. Well, what that does is translates into a to-do list for your hire. And I don't want that. This was like an important manager hire for us, right? And so what I want is talking in bigger terms. I like to say, to our manager, like if you're doing these things, these are the things that help me sleep at night. When you're focusing on these things, like that's what helps me sleep at night. Now they know what I prioritize, right? And how to play into that. Now, are there all these other little list item things? Yeah. But how much does that matter to me? Not a ton, right? Like I need to know you're working on. So I like more general, here's what winning in this role really looks like. This is how I'm going to sleep well on it. If I know that you're on top of these three things, like all the other stuff is just gravy. Or we will outsource that stuff, or I will backfill with something else. Like these are like, you have to add the weighting to the task lists and priorities or whatever. And so I think we spend too much time capturing every task item versus talking about the bigger picture of, this is what winning in your role looks like. This is what, if you were doing these things, man, I'm going to let you run because I'm happy, right? Like and so talking in those terms more than, all right, did you open up the shop at 7:30 and did you check all of the to-do list items and did you like, we'll figure that stuff out. And guess what? He'll have consequences himself if he doesn't do one of those things, right? Like something, well, I don't have to add consequences. I don't have to add prior. If the first time he forgets to order inventory, he's going to have a pissed off customer, right? And like, I don't need to deal it. He'll learn it, right? Yeah. So for me, I need him thinking about the bigger picture and that other stuff will fill in.
And that's not a hypothetical situation we just described. He forgot to order.
No, it is not. Obviously, it's still a little fresh.
But we didn't, that was our mindset with it. It's like, he will learn from this. We don't need to beat him up over this and that's not a big deal. At the end of the day, that it's something like he feels worse about doing that than we could, make him feel. And it wouldn't do any good, like beating that into him.
And that's not going to make or break our business, right? And if he stops thinking about the things that are going to make or break our business, we're in trouble.
That's a hiring process. So what are some of the key things that you want to do in the hiring process of that first employee? Like, I know I think we had some dinners and some, phone interviews, and I had different partners had different phone interviews with job candidates. Like, what are some of the, like, the steps that so me as a new owner saying, Chris, I need to hire my key employee, whatever that key employee looks like, that key employee, what would you say to me?
So one of my first rules, I mean, everyone in the world has different hiring advice and hiring processes.
I want to know the right hiring process.
Yeah, good luck. The right hiring process for me is taking a little longer than everyone else in your area for that position. I don't want the quick yeses from them. So like I am designing my hiring process in a time frame that is a little longer than the rest of the folks around me in that market. Because I don't want the quick ones. I want them to have to want it a little bit. I want to have to see that, but I also don't want to make them wait forever and I'm losing good candidates because, once again, great candidates aren't going to wait for you because they're going to have a lot of options, right? And so that's where I'm starting my design of our hiring process. Is I don't want to be the quickest. I want to be a little longer than the competition, right? I want them to get the people that are quick to say yes. The people that say quick to yes are not designing their future. They're not thinking enough that they need a job, right? And I don't want that desperation. So I want a little longer time period than that, but I don't want to, once again, be too long where I'm losing talent. Talent doesn't wait because they have options as well. And so that's where I'm starting the time frame of it. Now, within that, I want to create as many good filters that make sense within the bandwidth. If you've got team members, let them filter the first applications. Let someone else call first and make sure they're a culture fit. Let's, and make sure it kind of escalates to you as the owner before you're kind of jumping in on a phone call with them. Make sure there's some filters so you're not on the phone with every person that sends in an application. That's crazy to me.
That's exactly what we're doing right now, is just meeting with another business partner of mine in another business. And I have someone that works for me. She went out and posted all the job ads, did all the phone calls, did in-person interviews, gave us a summary of everything, and then then did a call with me and my business partner. And we said, okay, we want to talk to these 3 people, set up Zoom interviews. She set up Zoom interviews for Monday between 9 and 12, and it's all set up. So I'm doing the final interview. At least up to that point, we'll probably have, it will weed out a little bit more. And my business partner is like, Eric, she did better than I could have. And he's a business owner. He's like, she did way better. He was just like amazed. We had coffee yesterday. He was amazed. Like, I see what you're talking about, like how to run these businesses. We're not doing everything. And she is better at it than we are. We had to trust her to do it because that's where she lives. We don't live there, but that's how I would have done it anyway. Do most people do like that, or is that a difficult thing for people to even let go of that first stage of the process?
I think at least the first time, it's very difficult. Like, I think people really struggle with that. They want to know everything about it's their baby, right? But at the same time, talking similar from our last podcast, right? That's going to keep them in the weeds forever. That's going to keep them as the lid to everything. That's going to keep them having to have their hands on everything, which means it won't grow beyond the reach of that person if their hands are everything, right? Like, you're still limited by hours in the day. And so we've got to start moving away from that. But that is a hard one. And I think hiring is extra hard on the fact that you're bringing these people into the family. It's a big deal. Bringing someone into the culture can drastically swing things along. So it is extremely important, which adds weight and a little fear to folks, which means I've got to be hands-on this whole deal. And you just got to recognize and zoom out a little bit is you'll still have your touch on it. No one's getting in with that, but like, save some of your time on the front end, right? To work on actually spend that time developing the people that you do have and making better team members on your team or whatever that may be. But yeah, people struggle. It's hard. It's a big deal.
So the person that is hiring a manager for the first time, and they're going to be doing the generic manager duties, managing people, opening and closing, hiring people. It's going to be someone that is going to have a lot of responsibility in the business. What character traits are you looking for in that person?
So I'm starting once again, like, it is very little about the execution of all of those things. Like, on such an important hire, I have to really like this person. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to.
That's so true, isn't it?
Like, that carries more weight than can you put together a good spreadsheet? We'll figure that stuff out. Once again, if I have to solve that problem with outsourcing something else, like, I have to really like this person. I have to believe that they're like the work ethic piece, the humble piece, like, those are huge drivers to me. I have to believe that they believe in the vision, right? I want them to think, I don't want to just manage this store. I want to manage 12 stores. I want to grow as you guys grow the business. And like, I need those pieces way more. Like, I don't care about a lot of the tactical things in that position, because once again, that's shifting the mindset. I need that manager to act like a business owner. We just talked about, I need business owners to get out of all these tactical things, right? And all these hands-on things. And so if I then go to a manager about all these hands-on, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do that? Like, I'm putting them right back in that mode that I'm just talking about business owners need to get out of. I need to treat this person like a business owner. And so I'm looking much broader characteristics, character, culture fit, humble, hungry, like, the people smart. So I'm going to go with the Lencioni, right? Ideal team player, hungry, humble, and smart, being people smart. Like, those things matter way more to me than their education or their history, experience, and some of that stuff, their skill sets, because once again, I don't want them being the anchor to any skill sets. I want them being the conductor to the rest of the team. And so that position, more than anything, like, I'm looking high level.
100% agree with that. And I mean, we could just go on and on about that, but like, I would just echo everything that you say. It's easy for me to, like, I don't understand why somebody wouldn't want that, but I can kind of get why they get caught up in the tactical. They get caught up in like, oh, this person has done this for this amount of time and they've worked with this software. They can, go through a million tasks in a day and they know QuickBooks better than, this other person, whatever it is. It's like, that stuff doesn't matter as much as the list that you just gave us.
And it's a natural, once again, fear, because the manager is usually your first hire, right? And so you're thinking of all the tactical things you suck at that I want them to be good at, right? You feel like your first hire needs to fill in those things that you wouldn't be good at, to supplement and support and to cover those bases. And once again, that's not, you don't want to, we'll still solve those problems. You don't want to solve those tactical pieces here of this hire.
So the next question after my next question is going to be you hired the wrong person. You didn't listen to this before you hired. And all of a sudden you're 3 months into the business. It's open. You've trained, you've spent money. They're leading the company. The results aren't being delivered in the company and there's not really a way out. I want you to answer that question in a second. But first, like the interview questions, like what are some of your favorite interview questions?
So once again, staying away from anything tactical. So that principle of the path book that I talked about in the last one, I really want to know where they want to go. What fires them up? What are they excited about? Where do they believe? Where do they want to go with their family? What's their dream? What's their impact that they want to have? I'm hitting a lot of those type things because I want to connect at that level. I want to know, like what drives them, what's their impact, what's their higher purpose, if you will, to doing things. So I want a lot of that type stuff. If I'm getting a little more tactical, we'll do a
question. Tactical. We're getting tactical now with the questions. How do you have questions that would let you know that somebody's humble or hungry or smart or their work ethic?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask about scenarios, right? I put a lot of time into scenarios of the business coming up. And so let's just we do a lot of times, we'll do some sort of personality assessment or things like that. And so I'll notice several, okay, they're a highly detailed person. And they're low on the relational scale. I'm going to say, hey, like, within this job, you're going to have some days where you're just dealing with people and people problems. Like, how are you going to feel at the end of the day? Or like, are you going to be burned out? Are you going to, how are you going to manage your energy being low because you've been dealing with people all day? So I'm putting it into like real world scenarios that they will experience. And I want to put them in, I always am looking for scenarios that are going to be uncomfortable to their natural wiring, if you will, natural makeup. And so then I want to hear how they respond to some of that stuff. And so within their response, I'm going to be looking for that attitude, humbleness, people smart. They're like, well, first of all, like, I know there's going to be days like that. No job, if they start going to, I'm going to be exhausted in those days, but those will be spread out. And I understand the bigger purpose is if we, if that's a priority that day to get us to where we want to go, right? Like, I'm looking how they respond to scenarios more than anything. Like, that's where I like to get my tactical, where I get my tactical answers / I get my gut on those kind of, touchy-feely things on attitude or humbleness or hunger, on some of that stuff. So I want to do it through scenarios.
Well, and you mentioned like one of the first things that you said in the scenario is like, how do you feel? and it wasn't it's an emotion. It's something that they can describe. It's not like, how would you respond, or
Right.
like, what's your greatest weakness? Well, boom, they're going to tell you their greatest strength is their greatest, all of that. But it's not a yes or no question, and it's not a question on how they would do something. It's a question on how they would feel.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them to tell me stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because within those stories, I'm hearing a lot of those type things that you're talking about, the feelings of whatever thoughts.
So personality assessments, that's something that we do. I think we did that when we made our hire in our business and in other businesses that I have. And when you look at one of them is called Color Code we've used, and that one, and we've used DISC and others, but I think in particular Color Code talks about how they operate when they're under stress and not under stress. Like,
Mhm.
their greatest strength is whatever it is, but when they're under stress, the weakness of that strength comes out completely different. And so at least knowing who you're dealing with and how to manage that, or if you don't want to manage that type of person. So like, where does personality profile come into the mix?
So I think they're important. First of all, I don't really care about what assessment. There's a lot of good ones. I didn't know color code until you brought it up, and I really liked it. And I've used DISC a lot, and Myers-Briggs, and Colby Index, and SOI. Like, there's a ton of good ones. Now Enneagram is the hottest thing I've ever heard of. Like those come Enneagram. The Enneagram is like super popular. And once again, like all good, great, grand. I don't put a lot of stock into any one of them over the other. They all, for me, are tools to get some insight of better questions to ask. And so a couple things I am looking for, if we're looking at the hiring process, I'm looking for an assessment that doesn't take a ton of their time. Once again, I'm not trying to make people jump through too many hoops to get a job with us. So I'm looking for how much time does it take, and then I'm going to learn how to read those well. I'm going to get a lot of reps at learning how to read those well to identify good questions. So find an assessment and that you feel comfortable reading the results very quickly. But I will not do an interview without some sort of personality assessment that I've looked at before. By the time we talked about it, a bunch of steps should happen before it gets to me. I will not do, because of what we talked about, the type of questions I want to ask is I want to play off of what I'm reading from this assessment, where potential gaps, problems, challenges may be, and I'm going to put those into scenarios that are going to happen within the business. They're going to experience these certain different scenarios. And so for me, I won't even do an interview unless I have some sort of assessment that I am comfortable with applying to real world situations.
Well, as soon as we get off this podcast, I'm going to send my business partner a message, because I don't know if we have our personality profiles from these interviews that I'm having on Monday. So we got plenty of time to get it done. So thanks, man. Appreciate
it. But that's also another reason why I want it to be a short one. So you can send it over and it's 20 minutes and they do it over the weekend. You can get right, because if you do some 2-hour one or whatever,
forget that.
Yeah, and I'm going to be pissed if you send that to me and you're expecting me to do that over the week. Like, you're just, I don't.
If somebody wants to do that, it's like, I don't really want that person.
Yeah, right. Like, you're not prioritizing your own time enough if you're doing that. So now, once they're on board and we want to grow and learn ourselves, part of a development, great. Let's do some bigger assessments and let's do some different ones and go deeper and some of that stuff. I mean, there are better science-backed ones that, great. Let's do that as part of a team development. But in the hiring process, I'm not looking for that.
Well, as good as we are, we're not always going to bat 100. We're going to miss some of these hires. And, so talk to the guy that they're first-time business owners. They are 3 to 6 months into the business and they realize they hired the wrong person. And most of the time they had inclinations of that early on. Maybe there was some leaving sooner than they should have. Talking about different employees like they shouldn't have. There's as you look back, there's always things that you recognize, like, I kind of question that. And now 3 to 6 months into the business, you're like, the metrics are not where they should be. And then you start to realize how critical that hire really was. And, a month into it, probably should have fired them. And now you're 6 months into it and you kind of feel married to them in a way. Like, what kind of advice would you have to that person?
Welcome to the club. It sucks. It's expensive. So make note of those things that you said, kind of do a post-op. What are the things we kind of noticed this, but we didn't trust our gut on that or whatever. So do some of those things. But my philosophy on letting someone go is, first of all, usually because we care about people, or you're a crappy business owner, right? Like you care about people. And so you usually keep people too long.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is we don't start the process of correction,
Mm-hmm.
honest conversation, frustration soon enough either. And so for me, if you bring someone on, it is completely your fault if they suck. You brought on the wrong person, and you need to feel the weight of that, because I want you to feel the consequences, weight of that for the next hire, so we don't do this again, because of how expensive and exhausting and how much momentum you lose in the business and how it impacts the culture and how far it puts us behind on numbers. Like there's a lot of really expensive consequences to a bad hire. So you don't get a quick out. You don't get a quick fire. If you brought them on, you changed their life. They made a life decision to come on and be a part of this. And so you've got to start a process, and it's really candid. And here's what we're looking for, not where we're at. We need to have a consistent conversation around it. We're meeting about this daily, weekly, whatever. And we're going to start very soft with it. And we're going to turn up the heat if they're not executing the small steps towards that direction.
And within that, you're talking about like that honest communication and documenting this in written form too, correct?
Yeah, 100%. And I just finished this book, Radical Candor. I talk a lot about this and do a really good job on some of the conversations around this. But like it is, you have to have a process to try to turn it around. And you have to take them through a process. And here is why that's most important to me. We talked about you feeling the weight of it for the next hire. And so you think about that. But the other thing is, I need the other team members to see this.
Mm-hmm.
I need to see that they need to see that you don't have a quick trigger finger. Because if they see a quick trigger finger, now they're going to operate out of fear. And we've just started a very negative path within our culture and with our business. And so what I need them to see, even if we are 99.9%, this guy is not going to turn it around. I need the rest of the team. I'm still going to take 2 to 3 months. It's going to cost me a lot because I'm making results, but it's worth it to me, because if I fired him quick, I'm losing the rest of the team too. Mm-hmm. And then the word's getting out that this is the type of business where you're on, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm going to eat that cost. And over that 2 to 3 months, I want the team to see me working with them, me helping, me giving them opportunities, me developing a plan to get better, because I need the team to know it's not going to be some quick thing for me. If I'm in trouble, there's a process. He's going to work with me. He's going to, I need that. I don't want a culture of fear. And so that for me is what I need the team to see. That's the most important part. And over that couple months, whatever that time frame may be, maybe it's a month, but they can see it. And there is a development plan, and they're talking and communicating it. And if the progress, these micro milestones aren't being hit to get back on track, there's conversations happening, and we're turning up the heat. Man, we can't keep going down this path. Like, it will not be a surprise when we let them go. Like, dude, this is the next step. Like, I got to see you do this, we're getting that real in the conversation. This can't keep happening. If this keeps happening, we're going to have to let you go. Like, this isn't made for you. Now, if we can get past this, let's get to the next problem. Let's work on it, and type deal. And so, but I need some time and process in there.
Like, we owe it to them to take them through that process. It's really best for them. And sometimes they might shortcut that process and just quit, but that's not on us. And like you said, I mean, we're talking on our other podcast about strategic planning and not being in the weeds. The business owner in the weeds will see the firing of this employee as about the firing of this employee and getting them out of the company. Someone that is above that and hovering above the business and thinking strategically is thinking this is about the team, not about getting rid of somebody, and how the team's going to trust me as the leader moving forward, right?
100% right. And the flip side to that is the team members are also going to see if you give them too much grace for too long, and they're having to pick up the slack. So you also have to get it to a solution. You have to get it to a conclusion, right? We have to be working towards an end, one way or the other, whether they're able to take it on and they're carrying their weight, or not, and we're going to let them go, right? Because that's the flip side of it. The team members want to see that you're working with them and it's not, but they also want to say like, oh no, Chris is an idiot and this guy's playing them and I'm having to do the work. And now my rock stars that are carrying the weight are getting frustrated and think I'm an idiot and all this stuff. Like, so you have to also end it when you need to end it to show the team that you've got their back.
So good, Chris. So good. Any other last tidbits of wisdom on hiring or firing? And we didn't even get into compensation. We'll probably do that another day. But any other things or resources or books or tips that you have for the listeners?
Well, so I would say that Ideal Team Player, Patrick Lencioni, is a great book, resource. A lot of good questions in there and things to look for, and especially like the high level positions. But I would say anything I want that those kind of core pieces and the folks that I want in my culture. The piece for me, we talked about last podcast, is you win with relationships, right? Like, you are not a successful business owner if you have to get results. You have to win at results and relationships. This is a big piece to that. And so don't shortchange it. This is why I don't want the quick trigger finger. Like, you have to care about people, and empathy still has to be really high to be effective, in my opinion, in the marketplace. If you are losing empathy for your team members, you're going to lose empathy for the customers. Like, it's going to play out on those things. So this is important. People relationships matter, and they're hard work and they're messy. And so you got to take them through a process and lay that stuff out. And so if you see your empathy kind of waning, you need to get away from it for a while and recharge or something, and remember that the people are the lifeblood of this, the business.
Everyone, as you've heard Chris and I talk about this, I've tried to dive into the weeds. It's hard to me to get into the weeds because the important stuff is strategic. It's staying out of the weeds in this stuff. So we get into it a little bit, but like, so many things that we talked about today are absolutely critical to you building a team. And even beyond all of this, we talked about firing so the team, have the team in mind when you're firing. And we talked a lot of strategic stuff. But think, 3 or 5 or 10 years down the road when you're selling the business, and this team has to be humming along. It has to be good. And the less that you're involved in the business, the more that business is typically worth. And so it's the stuff that you do today has impact on cash flow today, but it also has impact on equity tomorrow. And one last little bit of wisdom from me is, hire an HR professional when you're dealing with some of this stuff too, for your local laws or state laws. That way you make sure that you are documenting things appropriately. And we do that whenever we're having situations. And so I definitely recommend that. Not just take liability off of us on the show, Chris, but but that's, it's true, right?
Yeah, 100%. And even more so as I'm thinking about the franchise world, right? Depending on how involved you are, you need to be protective. My personal business of coaching, consulting, and some of the content we're doing, I know these people. I'm not pulling folks into my business. Like, the people I work with, I know well. So I'm less worried about protecting myself, right? We've got bigger problems relationship-wise if I'm not taking care of them. If you are semi-absentee franchise owner or things like that, you don't know these people well enough. You don't have those relationships, or you're in another state. And so you do need to protect yourself, because we are in a very litigious society nowadays, and you got to kind of protect that. That's, once again, this franchise is supposed to be working for you somehow, and not a liability. And so make sure you are tightening that stuff up.